stepbible.org is a great way to read the Bible and to study it as deep as you like. Sometimes while reading a verse, there's a word you really want to explore. Step Bible can't supply decades of scholarly training, but it can help a great deal. You can use it to see what that word means in the original and trace how it's used in the rest of the Bible and even outside the Bible. For example, here in John 1, the word grace. Let's start by making room by closing the help panel, then make the text bigger with options. At the end of verse 14, we can see Jesus described as full of grace and truth. Let's see if we can find out what this means and what John is telling us. The word truth seems fairly straightforward, and if you hover over it just to make sure, yes, this gives a quick definition and it means what we thought it meant. But grace is not a common word in English outside the Bible, so hover over the word grace and see what the quick definition is. The state of kindness and favour towards someone, etc. This comes from the excellent brief definitions of Bill Mounce's dictionary at Technia. I was really pleased when he gave Step Bible permission to use them. If you click on the word, you find out much more. The word is charis. It occurs about 154 times in the New Testament. And first we have a brief definition, then a fuller meaning of the word in the Bible, and from this we can see it has quite a range of meanings: charm, benefit, gift, favour, etc. For us, this is a New Testament word, but we have to remember the word had a meaning in the Greek world for whom the New Testament was written. What would the first readers of the New Testament have understood by charis? Scroll down and you'll find the LSJ entry. That's the Little Scott Jones lexicon. This is the best lexicon for Greek literature, for the New Testament and outside the New Testament. And Step has improved it, because all the ancient authors have been turned into centuries when they lived, to help you see how the meaning has changed over time. And if you hover over the century, you'll find the original author as listed in the middle little. Though in this case I don't think the middle little is going to help us understand John very much. So instead, let's see how it's used in the New Testament by searching for it. First, let's open a new panel by clicking on the plus at the top right, then type grace and pick the word charis. And to start with, we've only found a few verses in John 1. That's because the reference is in our search line. The computer thinks we only want to search inside John 1. So let's delete John 1 and type John, so we select the whole book. Well, that's surprising. We still only have those same few verses. John uses charis a great deal in John 1 and then never again. So let's delete John and we'll find all the occurrences in the New Testament. And we find it's translated in quite a variety of different ways: favour, benefit, credit, thank. So it does have quite a range of meanings in the New Testament. How are we supposed to understand it here in John? Well, let's look at how it's used in context. So let's clear some room by getting rid of the search for charis. Don't worry, you can always get that search back again easily. Everything is saved in a bookmark. If you click on the tab at the top of the sidebar, you can see the bookmarks that have been saved and click on a new panel and restore it again, and then close it again. Everything's always saved. Now, the word grace is still highlighted because we've still got that word selected, and we can see there's quite a cluster of them. And also the word truth, you'll find a similar cluster if you hover over it. And the phrase grace and truth occur together in verse 14 and verse 17, both describing Jesus. By the way, notice verse 9, where true is highlighted a little less than the word truth. This means there's a related Greek word, but not exactly the same. Truth translates the Greek aletheia, and in verse 9 the word is elethinos. It's useful that Step pointed this out, because this too describes Jesus and his revelation. And there's a strange phrase in verse 16, we received grace upon grace. It looks like John is expecting the reader to understand something, but we're not getting it. Probably because we don't know the Old Testament very well. John's readers knew the Old Testament probably by heart, and they probably read it in Greek. Jews read the original Hebrew, but in John's days most Christians weren't Jews. And even Paul uses the ancient Greek translation when writing to Gentiles. So let's search for charis in the ancient Greek Old Testament to see if we can get a clue. So we add a Bible version by clicking on the ESV, then click on Ancient, because that collects all the ancient Greek and Hebrew Bibles. Then under Greek Old Testament, select Septuagint and the English translation. Remove the ESV, because that's based on the Hebrew text. And we'll remove John 1, because we want to see the Old Testament. And we click on Find to confirm all this. And we get an interlinear display, which is really useful to help us follow the Greek. Now we want to find charis, so first we'll delete Genesis 1 so that we're searching the whole Old Testament. Now we could type grace, but let's try typing charis. And even if I thought the chi at the start of charis was an X, it would still work. Step is quite forgiving about spelling. Usually you get what you want. Now we see all the places it occurs in the Old Testament, not as many as you'd think. For this, the interlinear isn't so useful. Let's switch to interleaved. In this very literal translation, charis is translated as favour, so let's help ourselves find the word by using the browser find. So click on Ctrl F, and the browser find box opens. And type in the start of favour, and it's highlighted. I'm using Chrome here, but most browsers have this function. Now it's easy to see there's a cluster of uses in Proverbs, a couple in Ecclesiastes, and another cluster in Zechariah. And it's in Zechariah that we hit gold dust, because the two main references are clearly messianic verses. Let's constrain our search to Zechariah by adding Zech to the search. And let's add some easier to understand Bibles, the NIV, ESV, and let's use Ctrl F to find grace. Alright, now we can see clearly where we are. Zechariah 4:7, then he will bring out the capstone to shouts of grace, grace to it. Well, the NIV is easier to understand. You see, it's a shout of blessing. It's like when a ship is launched, everyone's shouting blessings to it. When the temple was finished with the huge capstone at the top of the wall, everyone's shouting blessings to it. And of course we know from the New Testament that Jesus is like that capstone. Then in Zechariah 12:10, I'll pour out on the house of David and its inhabitants of Jerusalem a spirit of grace and pleas for mercy, so that they'll look on me, on him whom they have pierced, and shall mourn for him, etc. Well, that clearly is about Jesus. Now let's look at this in context. Click on the verse number and it opens in a new window. To see the context better, let's remove the other versions. And another benefit is that we get the cross-references back again. And let's add the other verse as well. We can simply type it at the top, Zechariah 4:7. And it merges nicely at the top of the chapter for us. Now click on the cross-reference in 4:7 next to the top stone. And this reminds us that earlier in Zechariah, a stone is linked with the removal of all sin in a single day. This certainly looks like Jesus. And go down to the other verse about grace in 12:10 and click on the note A next to when they look on me, on him whom they have pierced. And we're reminded that John quotes this verse at the end of his gospel. So it looks like John is hinting that the key is in Zechariah, for the alert reader anyway. Because that's where we find grace and grace, like that strange phrase in John 1:16. And where we find God's grace along with the truth about who the Messiah is and how he suffered. And the end of John confirms this by quoting Zechariah 12:10. A first century reader would have got all of this without using Step Bible, because they'd know virtually all the Old Testament by heart. After all, they didn't have much else to read, and there was no YouTube or TV. But isn't it great having all this power and knowledge at our fingertips? Have fun.